first 5 minutes of a movie are everything. Whilst you don't want to set up a precedent the film then can't live up to, the opening sequence is what is going to get your audiences to stick around. And in the case of horror movies, the bigger, the badder, the gorier, the better. For some truly bite-sized terror, there's nothing better than an eye-popping opening, sometimes quite literally, to get you going before you're knee-deep into the good stuff. So you better bring your wellies along for the ride. With that in mind, I'm Ash from What Culture, and these are the 10 scariest opening horror movie scenes ever. Ooh. 10. Trick or Treat. Following Halloween tradition and the unfortunate fate of those that decide to go against it, Trick or Treat is a film featuring 4 intertwining tales of horror unfolding in a neighbourhood. But before that, we get a little sample of what's to come. Frustrated and wanting to finish up cleaning to make the job easier for the morning, a trick-or-treater decides to start taking down the spooky ghost sheep props on her house there and then. But punishment always comes for those that break Halloween rules. As it turns out, taking decorations down before midnight is one of them. It seems a bit of a lose-lose situation when it's a choice between a raging house fire caused by unattended jack-o'-lantern or bloody crucifixion via candy death. But hey, what you gonna do? 9. Ghost Ship. Ghost Ship opens to a sultry Italian song performed to a ship of cruise passengers, idly dancing away and generally having a lovely old time. With pink cursive credits gracing the screen and a young girl dancing with the ship's captain in a mushy display of family friendliness, it isn't long until the film decides to f*** that and slices everyone in half with a rogue metal wire set loose by a mysterious saboteur. It comes quite out of nowhere, with even the passengers themselves taking a moment to be shocked before their torsos slither apart and they spend their dying breaths clutching their separated body parts. Lovely. It's scary in the same way as Final Destination, utilising freak accidents to make something that is fine to laugh at until you realise that it could, in a very unlikely but still plausible scenario, actually happen. Then you just laugh so you don't cry instead. 8. Scream. Acting as a spoof movie that blew the tired slasher genre wide open again in 1996, the opening remains one of the most ingenious of all time. A man rings up a lonesome Drew Barrymore while she prepares for a night in watching a scary movie, and she's soon forced to live out her own when the mysterious caller subjects her to a surprise test with dire consequences. I mean, it's one way to make Trivial Pursuit interesting, at least. With a surprising amount of bloodshed and questions that will have you screaming at the screen, the opening scene is one that has branded itself as one of the best in the Horror Hall of Fame. You won't want to answer the phone without caller ID for a good long while. 7. It Follows. This film is one that follows a terrifying, invisible entity that stalks those like an STD, attaching itself to a host that it relentlessly walks after when they have sex with an infected person, and moving on to the next when they boink someone new. In the opening, we see the terrifying effect of being a part of the string of sexy targets, in which a young girl flees an unseen pursuer and says goodbye to her family, before turning up like a crumbled Ryvita biscuit on the beach. It's a gripping opening and one that's terrifying for the unknown quantity of the attacker, but becomes all the more deeply upsetting when you've seen the film and re-watch. The stark rationalisation, death of hope, and grisly end become all too real by the end of it all. 6. 28 Weeks Later. Coming as a sequel to Danny Boyle's genre-sparking 28 Days Later, Weeks had something to prove very quickly if it was going to live up to the heady heights of its predecessor. Going in on claustrophobic, instantaneous nightmare fuel when a horde of undead nasties breaks into the home of a group of survivors, it isn't long until almost everyone is effectively wiped out in the space of 10 minutes. Setting the scene for Robert Carlyle's cowardly escape and subsequent attempt at redemption throughout the rest of the movie. Seeing the terror on the inhabitants' faces paralleled with the uncomfortably well-designed harbingers of the rage virus makes for an incredible opening. All the more so for establishing such a tight-knit group of friends, complete with sweet old woman prior to the attack. No one wants to see Granny Smith take a bite of those apples. 5. It. It's almost hard to decide which iteration of It is more effective, as whilst the 1990 miniseries has definitely not aged well, looking at you, Giant Deadly Spider Showdown, Tim Curry remains one of the most intense character creators on screen. His version of Pennywise is something that has haunted poor and suspecting adults and children for generations, but it's Bill Skarsgård's fanged maw that wins it by the skin of his teeth. Get it? Drawing down an unsuspecting child into his sewer lair after a paper boat falls into the drain, Pennywise the dancing clown takes his time to convince young Georgie that he isn't a threat, and has simply been blown into the sewer along with the circus. Reaching in to collect his lost boat, Pennywise tears off the poor thing's arm without a second thought, resulting in some special effects work that will have you keeping your hands to yourself for the foreseeable future. 4. Suspiria. Suspiria's opening scene is undeniably effective from its synth-heavy soundtrack, as jangling, uncomfortable music interwoven with eerie whispers dominates the frames from the outset and throughout. After being locked out of the building she's supposed to stay in after arriving late at night, Susie sees student Pat burst out and run away as quickly as possible. Fleeing in unknown terror, she makes it to a friend's apartment, though that isn't much help. Pat ends up launched through a sunroof after getting stabbed repeatedly in her still beating heart, and the falling glass from the ceiling all but slices her pal's face off. Leaving something to the imagination then, this one. 3. A Quiet Place. What better way to introduce an almost entirely silent film than with some silence? Very clearly setting the tone through a raid in an abandoned shop for medicine, a family executes their movements with painstaking precision, letting us know that the who can stay quiet the longest game is actually a serious endeavour and not something dire to entertain their children. Good for car trips, bus rides, apocalyptic nightmare alien invasions, it's all the same really. Of course, the one time a toy comes with batteries included leads to the breakneck speed death of the youngest child, executed with terrifying speed and visuals that will make your stomach turn. What started as a movie that you'd assume to build slowly and carefully suddenly comes crashing in with all guns blazing, and the quietness you sit through afterwards becomes an exercise in self-preservation as much as dramatic tension. 2. The Stepfather. Bringing an eerie calmness to mass destruction and death, The Stepfather's opening is one that will send shivers down your spine, building up as Terry O'Quinn goes about his daily routine with a remarkable ease, considering what's waiting for him downstairs. After seeing his face covered in blood, we watch as he changes and takes a shower, altering his appearance in the process by cutting his beard and hair. It isn't until he descends the stairs that we truly see the extent of the man's actions, however. A room littered with the remains of his family, and a home destroyed in the struggle. With the plot following O'Quinn as a serial offender of this grisly process, it brings a whole new meaning to Family Man. 1. Jaws. The old father time of shark films, the big guy of horror movies, the cool dude of Steven Spielberg's long and wonderful filmography, and now titled the bad boy of scary openings. Jaws is still the ridiculously high-set bar for movies to aspire to, and apparently the gold medalist of badly titled but appropriate accolades. Winner, winner, humans for dinner. Expertly switching between unknowing prey and lurking predator, the camera tells us that something is coming as a young girl skinny dips in the water, but not exactly what, creating a masterclass in tension until the very first bite, which we don't even know that's what it is. It's that mysterious and scary. After that, her all too real reaction as she sloshed around the surface before blipping into non-existence is something that will stay with you long after watching. No thank you.